Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Welcome to another episode of ReMAStered. I'm here, your host, Brother Abdullah Freeman. I'm joined with a very special guest. And today we'll be talking about Minority Report. Now, I kind of named it that because, it's catchy. It's not really about the movie because I've never seen the movie Minority Report before. So, yeah, it's a movie. Anyways, introducing our guest, Sister Nandee Shabazz. Assalamu alaikum, Nandee.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
And like I said, we're going to be talking about being a minority in educational spaces, workspaces, and life in general, just existing. So hopefully, are you considered a minority, like, right? Or are you part of the majority? No, I'm just playing.
I guess it depends on your definition. That's a really interesting question. Great way to start off.
What would, like, how do you define like a minority really, right? Like, is it somebody that's like you said, right? Like, you could be a minority amongst a larger group if it's more of them, but if in certain spaces you could be a majority, you know. So that's like an interesting complex.
It is. I mean, I think I view so there's like larger society, right? There's like the in our context living in America, like there's the United States as a whole, thinking of like racial like not disparities, but like breakups, like what is like the majority racial category that makes up the United States. And then in that sense, then yeah, I am a minority. And then also just like you said, that also changes depending on the context in which you're in. So while in larger society, there's like multiple minorities, right? Because of what the racial demographic is in the United States. But when we look in like the Muslim community specifically, right? Even though like let's say South Asian community is considered a minority within the larger context of the United States. When we're looking at the Muslim community, they're in certain like states, they are the majority, right? So me being in South Florida, for example, we're predominantly like South Asian Muslims here. So that is considered the majority of the Muslims here. In the larger context, they're the minority. So like, it's interesting. But like, I feel like if you go to Atlanta, it's a little different than like in Texas or I don't know where you
Depending on
were.
what part of Texas. Texas, it could be, what I mean, just depending where you at, really, what circles and.
That's true. I can give you that. I think when people think of Texas, I think of Dallas and like Imam Omar Suleiman and like was it Valley Ranch Masjid, like that. That's like the only thing I think of when I think of Muslims in Texas.
I think of Houston. I like Houston. I know the Dallas people gonna be mad about that, but I've never been to Dallas before.
I've been to Dallas once. Dallas is hot. The whole state is hot. I couldn't do that.
Yeah, Texas, like, it has this weird thing where, like, after 12, like, everything is cool. And then at, like, 12 p.m., they, like, put on, like, a oven or a microwave or something, and things just get, like, blazing hot. Like, but, it's interesting, like you said, right? Like, certain communities, or in certain spaces, they're the majority, but then in certain places, it's like they're the minority, right? Or they are the minority. And just balancing that out, really, that really dictates a lot of, like, actions people take, right? And the I don't want to say gall, but the comfortability people feel. Is comfortability a word?
I didn't study English. We can grow with it. Yeah, sure. Comfortability is a word for today.
If it's not a word, comment and let me know what's the real word below, please. But just the comfortability of being yourself, I guess, or that version of you that's at your house with your mother or with your siblings, like that version of you. I think just depending on who's there, it gives people certain more, I guess, leeway, you could say.
I'm gonna need you to like repeat that in like a different way.
I'm saying like people, depending the actions people take, really varies with the people. So for example, right, you may feel more comfortable to do certain things because you're amongst a group of people, right? Maybe people from the same community, same ethnic group, same race, same religion, right? So for example, when you hang out with non-Muslims, right? It's like, okay, I have to pray. You pray a lot. It's like, okay, like you do it, right? But when you're with Muslims, saying you got to go pray is not like almost like second nature. You don't even have to double think it. You don't have to say how to slide it in. You just, hey, it's time for Salah, or hey guys, I forgot to pray. I said, oh, I'm about to be right back. Oh yeah, okay, go. They'll even like facilitate you doing this action, right?
Mm-hmm.
So things like that really varies depending on the group.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think like group dynamics and just being able to, there's, like you said, yeah, I agree. There's a huge sense of comfort that comes from just being in spaces with people that you're comfortable in, or comfortable with, that you know how to navigate. It's like one of those things where, very much so, like you said, you can um, be your full self. And I don't think
Hmm.
oftentimes we're afforded that. So I definitely appreciate when I'm in spaces where I'm like, okay, I don't have to worry about certain things that I do when I'm in like other spaces, right? Where I can just
Hmm.
just not overthink, I don't know, how I'm dressed, overthink how I talk, making sure I don't use certain words or certain phrases that like might not be completely understood or taken out of context. Or on the flip side, have to worry about other folks using like terms and phrases that, coming from like outside groups, and can be a bit like like you
You're
can't
not used
say
to
those
that.
things.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and
Hmm.
so being in spaces, at least for me, like specifically like majority like Black Muslim spaces, like it's always a vibe. um and yeah, so I can definitely get that like that comfort
Let's
aspect.
so let's take it to like the school a bit, right? So real quick,
Mm.
like just if you want to just give everybody like just your background. Typically I introduce the people, but I feel like you would be like, I didn't introduce you the way you want to be introduced. No, I'm just playing. But if you want to just introduce yourself to the people, give them like your background, what you graduated in, what you do a little bit.
Okay. I guess I feel like you should have started off introducing me. Now it feels awkward. But
You said you feel
I
awkward. You introducing yourself. Yalla. Salam
okay.
alaikum. I'm Nandee Shabazz.
Assalamualaikum. Uh, as you said, my name is Nandee Shabazz. I currently live in near Miami. It's like a small little suburb right north of Miami, but it's basically Miami, in Florida. I think there's like a random Miami, Ohio, or something like that. Not that Miami.
It's a
Um,
university that's out there. Yeah,
that's crazy.
Miami of Oxford. Yeah, I know somebody who went there.
Okay, then let me not say nothing too bad. I did my undergraduate degree at Florida International University, FIU. I did a double major in international relations and political science. That was umpteen years ago, it feels like. And then last year, alhamdulillah, I graduated with my master's degree in public policy. I am doing a lot of different things at the moment. Um, Not many of which actually deals with my degree. So it's one of those problems that you run into when you don't study STEMs. It's like, oh, I went to, grad school, did the whole like, no, I didn't do that. I'm just playing
I,
around.
I I feel like that's the majority of America though. Like people like
Yeah,
work in tech and have like a degree in like I don't know, Earth
liberal
space
arts.
science or something like that. Yeah, like it's just so no, that's fine. But in that space, right? Like those two, like
Mm-hmm.
you were a hijabi and then a
Yeah.
black woman, which is not a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people that are in either one of those spaces. So, what
Mm.
was that experience like being a double major in both of those majors as a hijabi and as a black Muslim, or as a
That's
black woman? Because I
interesting.
guess a hijabi would be a Muslim woman. So.
Yeah. Um, that's an interesting question. You're making me think all the way back when to 2012 when I started college. I mean, I so I guess like let's just like throw down like what FIU was like, right? So FIU is in
Hmm.
Miami, but like
It's in
when
Miami,
you
Miami, or is it in like the suburbs?
it's in Miami, Miami. Like there's this
Ooh.
street called, it's like, what is it, Southwest 8th Street? Like we call it Calle Ocho because it's like 8th Street. It's very, very like Miami esque, very like heavily like Cuban influenced, very much so. Like when people think of like Miami, like have you ever seen? I'm just gonna. Have you ever seen the music videos for like that Chris Brown song "Kiss Kiss" with Chris Brown and T-Pain?
A long time ago, where they're
A
like it's
long
like they're at
time
the
ago.
college and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
that was shot at my
Uh-huh.
university. So if anyone's seen
Mm.
that music video, if you look, I don't know what's in it, so I'm not gonna say look it up. But like
Yeah.
that's where I went to school at, right? Very Miami.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people have a misconception about Miami where they think it's like, okay, like we're like so close to like the Caribbean, to like South America, we're like real diverse. Like it's not so much so. Um, and so, in a lot of the classes that I was taking, specifically like in like the social sciences realm, there weren't a lot of Black students, like period. Um,
Mm.
in the majority of classes that I had, um, there were a few Muslims who were in the classes that I was taking, like folks that like I met through like MSA. Like I can think of like off the top of my head two other folks who were like in the same major as I was. But a
Hmm.
lot of other people were like pre med is like it's like I feel like it's like the Muslim stereotype for you to be like a doctor, an engineer, or a
Yeah, let me
lawyer.
say that, man. It got look, Muslims. I know it's money in the medical field, but please, it's this is. Listen, man. It got to be
We're dying out
fartikifaya
here.
for dunya. Like you got to learn something else, please. Like do something else, please. We feel like
Not
50
they
people all doing the same major.
yeah.
Mashallah, like I'm not hating, but just jokefully, like please.
No, we
I know a
got
lot of
like
parents gonna cancel me after
there's
this.
like 47 doctors whose names are Muhammad. Like it's great, but like
If
as you
all
can
of the
see,
Muslims walked out of healthcare, we would have a crisis in America. It'd be a
we,
crisis in America.
there really would, because it's ridiculous. But like if they walked out of like I don't know politics, they'd be like, oh, we might have missed like two
Oh, it's like yeah, like
or
all
three.
four of them
Actually, you know
left.
what? Shout out to Munira in dang, was I
Oh,
talking
and
about
Abdullah
Ohio?
Akol. Shout out Abdullah Akol too.
Yeah, you know what? You know,
Yeah,
we got some folks. We're doing the thing. But yeah, so it was interesting. I think I was also in college at a really interesting time because I think when I started, it was Obama's second term, and I was still in school when Trump got elected as well. So it was
yeah, that's
just
2012 to 2016. Yep.
yeah, so like all of that was just going on while I was in school. Personally, I don't feel like I had any like weird interactions. Um, I can think of a couple of moments where like things were being discussed in classes, and I was like, this is kind of like Aki, but like nothing that stood out to make me be like, this is not
Wait, when you say
cool.
Aki, you mean like awkward?
Yeah.
Because when you said Aki, I thought of like the dudes who like the Aki way. You know what I'm saying? The dudes in New York who making the chopped cheese. Like yeah, that's what I thought about. That's what
Like I
I thought about.
actually
But
can't.
no, definitely, no,
It's
definitely
like yo,
awkward
the
though. Definitely.
axe.
I was like,
No, yeah, no, like
yeah.
AWKY, like Aki.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and yeah, it's so it was real interesting. I'll say I don't think anything like crazy came up. I think a lot of the times to kind of help me get through like situations where I was like, okay, this is like a little weird. I was heavily involved in like MSA from like my sophomore year. And then towards the end, I also got really involved with like BSU as like just like as a member, but
Mm-hmm.
like finding solace in those spaces also kind of helped
Mm-hmm.
as well. And helped in some ways, not so much in others. And so, but yeah, so it was a fun time overall. I had fun.
So you say like it's interesting that you say Miami wasn't that like because I think Miami you say it wasn't that diverse, but I think I seen some stat that said Miami is like the second most diverse city in North America after like Toronto. You know what I mean? Like it was like wait
Really?
wow that's yeah it was some stat I seen. Now of course I think New York may have more than everybody because New York is like a super mega city.
Mm.
Everybody's there, right? Like everything you want, everybody you could ever meet, right? But that's interesting because Miami's like, when I went at least. You know what? Wow, it goes back to that first point you said. Because if you're in the greater context of like the greater America, if
Mm.
you're from like, I don't know, middle of nowhere, Nebraska, Iowa, like those places where it's really predominantly homogenous cultures of like just the one type that's the majority of the United States, right? When
Like
you think of places
Indianapolis.
like Miami, you would think Miami's super duper diverse, which it
Mm.
is. But then if you're in Miami as a minority, then you're a minority. So the people that are seen as a minority are actually the majority. Because Cubans, yeah, Cubans really got a big grip on Miami.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's definitely like it's noticeable, right? And shout out to Cuban people, right? Mashallah, some of them are Muslim. I hope more of our brothers and sisters join the deen, inshallah. But speak to this when you decide when you decided on those majors and you seen you were
Mm-hmm.
the only hijabi there, you're the only black woman there. Were there ever times it discouraged you, or did you just feel like it's cool, it's whatever, or did you not realize it till later down the line?
Um, I mean, you definitely realize it. I think the reason why it wasn't discouraging. I think
Hmm.
when you operate as a minority, so like for example, right, you said that Miami is considered one of like the most diverse cities, I guess
Hmm.
after like Toronto. Miami is diverse in that there's a lot of people from different places, but Miami is also very segregated. So
Mm.
like I outside of like specific places, every like place in Miami is run by like a different group of people, right? So like I'm in Miramar. Miramar, Pembroke Pines are very close together, but like Miramar specifically is like run by like our entire city council. I'm pretty sure is like Jamaican, right? Miami is like the Cubans hold down like Miami, like that is like their space. There's within Miami, there's like also smaller little enclaves. So like there's like Little Haiti, there's like Liberty City, there's Miami Gardens, and these all are like where specific. There's
Miami
Hialeah,
Beach.
yeah, Miami Beach. But like a lot of different people, a lot of different
No, because I
people.
said that because I went. It was a lot of Jewish people in Miami Beach.
Oh, we have so I'm not I like I don't hang out in like Miami because Miami is like Miami. They do way too much there. We
Hmm.
have a large Jewish population in Fort Lauderdale for sure.
Hmm.
Yeah. Especially because like we have a lot of folks who like come from up north, from like New York, all of the cold states, and they come down here and
Yeah, a lot
whatnot.
of New
But
York
like
people
there's
have
a
migrated. Yeah.
mm-hmm.
Hmm.
And so that kind of like also that's also like another like group dynamic that's also added into the mix where like if you're like in Dania Beach area for example, they have a large population there, but it's the people generally stay in their like small little like enclave. So like little, I mean, aside from like gentrification that's happening now, right? So like we're kind of like losing Little Haiti, we're losing Liberty City, which is like traditional like black or
Really?
like diasporic areas. um
What areas
and a lot
predominantly
of
the Muslims be at?
there's I think majority of Muslims are in like Broward County and like North
Mhm,
Miami area. So I think there's like a large
mhm.
population like Miami Gardens. Broward County has like a lot, and there's more like up north in like Pompano area ish. I don't think there's that many. Like the more south you go, I think there's like less. Also
Mhm.
because the more south you go, that's like when you think of like Miami, like you see on like TV, like Bad Boys, like that's what people still think of. So we don't really like we're not really there too much. At least not like permanently, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
But yeah, so I've been used to being like the only like black Muslim woman in spaces before. Um so even like in high school, I wasn't like I went to a majority black high school, right? But like I was one of two hijabis who were in the school. So like that's
Wow.
always just been like a constant. So when I was in university, it wasn't really that different than what I've already experienced. In middle school, I think I was the only hijabi.
Wow.
And in like early middle school, I was the only Black Muslim in like the Islamic school that I was at, right?
Mhm.
So it was kind of, or like one of, again, one of two, right? So there's always just been like this dynamic where I'm kind of used to being like the only one who looks like me in a space. So
Mm,
when I was in college, that didn't really have an effect on how I felt like I could be in classes. I
mhm.
think I took it more so like, okay, like I'm here and I'm in this space. Um,
Let me ask you this
and I
then.
felt, mm-hmm,
So, that's very interesting. Like, what was the conclusion you came to in your head to make you say, like, accept it at least, right? Because a lot of people struggle with that, right? At least
mm-hmm,
dealing with that isolation and the magnified effect of like everything you do, like it's like, what is it in sociology? I think it's called like master identity, or I forget the
mm-hmm,
terminology, but it's something like the first thing when people see you, that's what they like identify first. So they see you,
mm-hmm,
okay, she has the hijab on, okay, so she's Muslim, or she's religious, some religious group, that's what they think with the headscarf. Then they see she's
mm-hmm,
black, okay, so she's black. So whatever perceptions they have of Muslims or black people, they like subconsciously may impose on you, how
mm-hmm.
did you come with just to that realization to be able to like, okay, this is what it is, and just cope with it and be able to like progress forward? Because mashallah, you finished your bachelor's, you finished your master's. Now of course I could be ignorant in the fact that maybe you did go through some type of emotional distress that we're not discussing,
Mm-hmm.
which we don't have to, but like you still pursue, like you completed your goals, mashallah, so you were able to overcome that to some degree.
Mm-hmm. Um, I mean, I don't know. Well, okay, well, you know what? I think that's fair. I think I was gonna say I don't think I had that moment where I was like, oh, I'm like representing so much just being myself. But I did. I think, however, the reason that it never felt like a burden
Mhm.
was probably because of how I was raised.
Oh,
Um,
mashallah. What did your
if
parents
if
do? If it's so it's a
what
process, right? Like what did
I mean,
they?
I don't I couldn't tell you what they did. I think like if anyone who is like, I don't know if you've like formally met my father before. I think anyone who has knows how my dad is, and I think it was kind of just like from when we were younger, just constantly being aware that like of who we are, what we represent, the family that we come from, the strength that's there, what Islam is like, and the model with which we have to live up to. And I think because that was so heavily ingrained into us, like me and my siblings, like that was kind of just like it was like that just like is what it is. So it's like, okay, well, yeah, like I'm a Black Muslim woman, like uh my name is Nandi. I know where my name, where like I know what my name means. I know like the strength that's behind my name. Like we're
What does it
Turners.
mean?
That's uh, oh, that's all like okay. So I know who I was named after. So if you've ever
Okay.
seen I don't know if it was a movie or a series. I think it came out in like the '80s called Shaka Zulu.
All right, please be careful because your dad might see this and be like, You don't remember what I named you after, so please be
I know that
very,
would be crazy, right? That's why I was like, oh, I was like, this is going online. It's
very,
very different when you're like talking to somebody, you make mistakes, and no one's gonna
yeah,
know. I'm
yeah.
gonna get text and be like, so that's wrong. Um, but, but yeah, so there was a movie that came out in the 1980s, or a series called Shaka Zulu. And Shaka Zulu was a warrior chief from the Zulu Nation in South Africa, who is known for fighting off the Dutch when they first started their attempts at colonization. His mother's name was Nandi, and that's who I was named after.
Oh, mashallah.
Um, I remember when I was younger, I like looked it up on the internet, and it said it meant like strong-willed in Swahili. I don't know how accurate that is, because you can't really trust Sheikh Google all the time. But I know that's why I say I know who I was named after. I don't know if like the translation of the name is accurate. Whether it is or not, I think the translation that I found all those years ago is still very fitting. So But yeah, so that's
If you speak Swahili or you speak Dembele or you speak Kosa, or is it Kosa? Kosa. They click when they say Kosa. You know what I mean?
they do.
Or you
And
speak
I went,
Zulu.
yeah.
Please comment it
Let
the
us
name.
know, because if I'm wrong,
Yeah,
please don't like come after me. Just like send me like send a message to Abdullah, and Abdullah will send it to me, and then I'll know.
yeah. If it's a bad
Um,
message, don't send it to me.
don't send it to me either. You can just keep
It's
it
a
in the
bad message.
drafts.
Yeah.
But
No, but it's
yeah,
interesting. So your parents
hmm
really like that support system really helped you move forward in what you were dealing with and going through, really. Just that life
I
aspect and shaping you.
yeah, I mean, I don't think I would say it's. I guess it was more like a preventative matter, because I don't feel like there was any instance where like I had to overcome who feeling like I was like I didn't belong in a space. Um, I think that didn't come till I was older. When I was an undergrad, it was kind of just like, again, because of like the strong sense of like pride that comes from like who I am, like we're Turners, like Turner Shabazz, like that, like what do you mean? What am I doing here? What are you doing here? Like that, like that's really how we've been. I don't know if that's good or not, but that's how we've been like told to, like, or been taught to operate. That like if I walk into a space and I'm the only person that looks like me in the room, like I my job is to make sure that like I make way for like other folks who look like me to be in that room, and to remind the people who are in that room that like more than anyone else, like I deserve to be in that space, and they should like, and like that's just how I was raised to be. And so I feel like that's how I operated while I was in undergrad. I think
Mhm.
a lot of those questions of like, am I really supposed to be here? Um, like that imposter syndrome type stuff. Like I'm the only one who looks like me. Is this space the space for me? A lot of that came after graduating, after working for a bit, and a little bit while in grad school as well.
Okay, so let's dive into that.
Mm, okay.
So what is how would you and let me share a little bit, I guess, about myself in terms of the undergrad space. I think that, well, not even about myself, but I think one thing to note about you, at least, is that even though you were a minority, you were still a minority amongst minorities, right? So
Mm.
maybe some of the biases and the what they call them, microaggressions, is that the word people use now? Like for some of the things, like the
E-
microaggressions that come with being
yeah.
at like somewhere like a PWI, which for those who don't know, PWI is predominantly white institution.
hmm
So some, what would FIU be? Because it's mainly Hispanic people.
Uh,
We'll come
FIU
up
is
with
not.
terminology for that.
Yeah, it's not a PWI, but
Yeah, it's not. I was
it's
about to say not.
yeah. I don't know. I feel like even being a minority amongst minorities, like you would think that it was like, oh well, like we're all not white, right? So we all got something in common, and I feel like that's when the microaggressions are worse,
Really?
because it's that sense of like, okay, well, like this system don't want none of us to be here, right?
Mm.
However, it's like this thing that you always go back to, like like for me, in my case specifically, anti-blackness is global, right? So like even in instances where like none of us are like the what's considered like the correct quote unquote like American, right? None of us are the correct skin tone. We don't have the correct hair texture. We don't have the correct lineage. None of us have that. However, what makes like you said, like what makes like the microaggressions and like really like the anti-black racism like still exist even in these spaces is the fact that like it's like twofold. There's like one, even like from like all of these people coming from different cultural backgrounds, like they still hold on to like this act and this anti-blackness that like exists within them, right? That they're coming from like whatever cultural context there is. And then also, which is something that I feel like I say a lot, it's like non-black minorities still hold on to and try to attain whiteness, and that can also look like putting down like black people and like black Americans specifically, like that, like that still exists, right? which is why when I'm like, okay, like, yeah, a lot of people, there's a lot of different people from a lot of different places in like Miami, but like Miami is still like real red when it comes to like politics. Like the whole neighborhoods in Miami were like real supportive of Trump. The founder of the Proud Boys is from Miami, like he's Cuban, like you know what I mean? And so like a lot of these things like always still exist and also definitely still show up while I
Yeah,
was
we
in
know what you are on in.
undergrad.
We know what you guys are on in Florida. You know,
Yeah, we're it's something in the
we're
water.
not gonna
That's
go
a
into
whole nother
politics though. We're not gonna go into politics. This isn't a
yeah,
political
no.
show. It's about
We
so.
definitely
Let's talk about when you got to the professional workspaces, right? You said you felt
mm-hmm.
a little bit of that imposter syndrome and things of that nature. Now, what
Mm-hmm.
did you get your like that first job? What was that first job in? Was it in public policy? Was it in politics? Was it in some type of international relations? Like, what was it in?
I was working in like civil rights law.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Talk about that. Like, what was that experience like being a hijabi black Muslim woman?
Um it was it was interesting in that um that's I'm trying
I
to
hope we don't
okay.
open up no traumatic experiences. Like, if this was
No,
really,
no.
if this is really bad, let's just next question. You know what I mean? Like,
No.
this is really.
No, it's not. It was interesting.
Uh,
Um I think it was the first time where I was really faced with the idea or the thought that I wasn't qualified to do the work that I was doing
mm,
because of the space that I was in. And I think a large part of the reason as to like why like some of the people who like I was working with, um, I don't think saw me as being qualified in my position or qualified to speak about certain things. Um, because I didn't fit I feel like didn't fit a specific like mold with which they thought like someone who would be qualified to like do certain things would look like. Um and so like that was like I think that was the first time I like experienced that, which was very weird for me. Um and then also just like again like that notion of just like anti-blackness exists um everywhere unless you like actively work against it, because I also remember like this is a civil rights group or like we're supposed to be doing like the specific kind of work, but like when the mention of like I don't know like wanting to work with like because it's like when like BLM was also like popping off at the time and whatnot, like wanting to work with like a local BLM chapter to do some stuff that was specifically related to like that, there was so much pushback from like leadership that I don't think I expected, considering the line of work that we're in. Um, there was, and that was just also just like very weird. But yeah, I think it was a learning experience, and it definitely, like I said, was the first time where I started to question whether I was qualified to do the work that I was doing. Um, and that kind of stuck with me for a few years. I don't think it was until 2020 really where I like kind of started to be like I kind of know what I'm talking about sometimes, you know what I mean? But
mm,
like, and I had started that job in 2015. So I was there from 2015 to about 2018. And then it wasn't until 2020 where I started to feel like, okay, like I can kind of do this.
mm.
So yeah.
So, like, was it a certain moment during that period that you really sat to yourself? Like, some moments you just sit and you're like, man, like, is this really like, should I like go on Indeed right now and look for like different jobs? Or was it a moment like that? Or do you think it was just a culmination of everything that was going on that some days you just feel down versus up?
No, there was definitely like it was a culmination of things, but I think there was definitely like a specific moment where I was just dang. I would it was we were doing a fundraising event, and we had so I was the like events coordinator person, so we had like planned this fundraising event. It was during Ramadan, and I had like chosen the topic. I don't remember what the topic was, but I remember that as the person to introduce this topic and to talk about like then to get to like connect. Oh, okay. Let me back up. It wasn't a fundraiser event. It was like an interfaith event, and I had chosen the topic to be and I can't remember like the name of the treaty because I get the two mixed up. But it was a treaty that was signed before the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was like the prophet between
Oh,
something had
between the Arab
happened.
nations.
Yeah,
And he said if
the,
he had the chance, he would have like he would do it again. Like he
yes.
would sign. He would like go be a part of that agreement. I forget the name. Yassalam. I just talked about that not too long ago with my friend.
I always say like the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, but I don't know if that's the right one or not
I don't
because
think
there's
she did.
two, and I don't think it's that one. But I can't. My brain is like shot. I promise you,
Mm-hmm.
like post COVID stuff is like real. I can't think these days. But anyway, um, and
This is why
so
this
I.
podcast is virtual. No, I'm just. And I was just like continue though.
And so I had put myself to like talk about this piece because I had we had just gone over it in like some mass event. We had been talking about it recently. In my usra, we had just gone over it, and then like I had like worked with I think one of my mentors also just because like this was just something that had been discussing a lot recently. So I was like, I definitely feel like I am like qualified to do this like the short reminder. The point of it was that like when seeking to like correct injustice, Muslims are encouraged through like our example to work with like interfaith groups, so like fruit groups that aren't necessarily Muslim because of like what the Prophet said, like in regards to this treaty. Um, and so I remember I had put myself on the schedule to speak about it because I was like I've done the research. I've like
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
spoken about this in multiple spaces. I don't remember what year this was, but I was like I know I was like heavily involved in mass at the time too. So I was like, okay, like I've seen different learned people we've all like discussed this. I feel very confident in my ability to be able to do this. And when I put my name on the schedule, one of the people who we were working with was like, okay, who's going to be talking about this? And I had said that like I put myself down to talk about it because I felt like I could do it justice. And I guess like two individuals who were like above me weren't sure of my ability to do it. So they had asked like the person who was like directly ahead of like my director, who was the head of my department, about like, okay, Nandee put herself as the person to talk about this. And her response was, well, if Nandee put herself on the schedule to talk about it, then let her talk about it. I have full confidence that she can do it. So I had assumed that I was going to be the one giving this like presentation. I had prepped, like I had like done all of the things that you need to do before you give a presentation. And we get to the interfaith like iftar, and it wasn't until like so we're going through the program, like everything's going cool, and right when they like make the announcement for the presentation, instead of calling my name, they call up someone else's name. And at that point is when I found out that they had discussed amongst themselves that they didn't think I was qualified enough to give the talk. So without letting me know, they invited someone else to give the presentation. And I didn't find out
Wow.
until I was like literally getting ready to stand up to walk to the front, and they didn't call my name. And I was like, oh,
Wow.
okay. And I think that was the moment where I was just like,
Subhanallah.
I can't be in this space anymore. Um, I think I stayed until the end of Ramadan. And I think I was, at that time, I was still like, I'm going to go to law school. So I'm going to just like hold this out. because like a paycheck is nice, right? And for like a next month, but like I was like, I can't do this anymore. But
SubhanAllah.
yeah, so that was the moment that like took years to kind of like come back from, because I was like, yeah.
You I might have just left. I might have just took my stuff and left. Salam alaikum rahmatullah. Just walk out. Just walk out. Keep the check, keep everything. Keep my name tag, my mug. What? Like they just was it somebody that you knew that they called up to go speak? Or was it like was it somebody
It
more
was some
qualified than you?
it was someone else in the community. I don't want to say more qualified. I think equally as such. I do know. I found out later that the person who they called up had no idea that this had even gone down, and so like I don't fault that individual like at all, because like you're just put in the middle of something. How are you supposed to know, right? Especially if this is coming from like the operations director of the organization. How are you supposed to know, right?
Yeah, that's true.
But I don't think I would say more qualified. Um, and that's not to like assume, like not to say that I feel like I'm like, oh, this like extreme. Like I don't feel that way at all. But I just think that I had full confidence in my ability to be able to do the topic justice, and was just like utterly crushed when they didn't call my name up. It was crazy. Like my mom was there, my aunt and my uncle were there too, and I think they knew I was supposed to talk, but like not when. And so like I think at some point they all like glanced over and looked at me, and like they could see that something was wrong. And I just remember like I definitely held it together to the end of the event. And then as I was driving home with my mom, I just broke down and started crying. And I was like, I can't believe it. And she was the one who was like, I need you to quit like immediately. Like you need to turn in your letter. Like it, she had pushed, she wanted me to quit for a very long time. But at that point she was like, this is crazy. My uncle was on the board of the organization, and she was like, I'm texting your uncle now because this is ridiculous. And I was like, no, don't do that. Cause I was young and was like, I don't want anyone to think I'm a snitch. I should have let her. But yeah.
You stuck
Yeah.
to the code. I call the police now. I left that life of I left that. I call the police now. I ain't about to deal with y'all fake man. But you know, speaking, I'm happy you brought up Ramadan, brought up Iftar, you brought up our beloved Habibullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Like, let's move now to like the space that is the dearest to us, right? The identity that we love the most, our Muslim
Mm-hmm.
identity, right? And let's talk about being a minority in those spaces.
Mm-hmm.
So as a hijabi, I mean, I don't want to open up a can of worms because hijabis will tell you everything wrong inside the Muslim community from now till Qiyamah. Yeah, this happened like this brother did this to me and this, that. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Or you'll complain about, some black sisters complain about people. You complain about a particular doctor. I ain't going to say his name, but, that conversation we had before this about the
Mm.
flight, the particular individual. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
So, but what talk about being a hijabi, a woman inside of Muslim spaces, and then let's start with there. What is it like being? I guess we can't say for everywhere because it varies with each. But your experience, what has your experience been like being a hijabi in Muslim spaces, like a woman, at least I should say, in Muslim spaces? What's that experience been like?
Mm.
Just woman
Okay.
first. We're gonna get to the black part next, but
Okay.
just the woman
That's what I was
first.
gonna ask. I was like, it
Just the
depends on
woman
what.
first.
It definitely depends on the space.
Mm.
It's it's really it's a thing. I think I
A
will
good
agree with what you
thing, a
said.
bad thing. Like, what?
I feel like it's really hard. I really do think it depends on the space. Like I'll speak specifically on like South Florida, for example. I think not I think, because I know, because like I lived through it, right? I, it's exhausting. Like really and truly. Um to the point where I honestly try not to be involved and engaged in most community settings because of how exhausting it is. Like like it's 2023, and I am so over the, like, not like basement, right? Because we're in Florida, so we don't have basements because the basement is water, but like back closet room praying spaces for women at like the masjid. Like,
Hmm.
the being in a closed room with no windows, and like not even a TV to see the imam, like, for praying, because like I don't even know like the reasonings behind it. Um
I know in
the
some I think if I'm not mistaken, it's one of the madhahib where it's like it's I think it's Hanafi where it's more encouraged for women not to come to the masjid if I'm not mistaken. But you know what? Don't quote me on that. I don't want the Hanafi people to come attack me. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not. Shout out to my Hanafi brothers and sisters. You know what I mean? No, but
yeah,
continue. You know, yeah.
and yeah, but or maybe that has to do with, I think it's starkly different from how I was raised to view how Muslim women should be treated, and also the examples that I have of like Muslim women in like community spaces. And so I think as I've gotten older, and as I've found spaces where I feel like I can thrive in, I have a lot less patience to be in those spaces where that isn't the case. So like, I'm very picky about which masjids or which masajid I go to for Jummah with my dad. Like, if he's not going to like this one specific masjid, the likelihood of me going with him is like very, very little. And
I
really
see.
like it, and outside of being invited to specific events where someone has personally said, "Hey, I want you to be there," I usually don't go, because like I really don't think men understand like the chaos that goes on the women's side. It's just a lot. It's
You
chaos.
like I can hear it. You know what I mean? You know when you know something is happening there, but you don't know exactly. And like, subhanallah, like I remember the first time I went, like, cause volunteering the masjid, I went to go help like clean up on the sister side when nobody was there, right? Before the haram
Mm.
police be like, why are you going on the sister side?
I was
Astaghfirullah.
I was
Right?
definitely about to make a joke, but go ahead.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. So I remember I went on the sister side and I was just so I felt like a little kid because I'm like, wait, this is what it looks like over here, subhanallah, right? I'm looking and I said, wait, it's kind of small. And then I left. So I'm like, I can only imagine with the children who are running, doing all what they're doing. Because when we pray on the brother side, you're praying next to some child and they jump on all fours and slap their head on the ground and go into sujood, and you have to stop yourself from laughing. You know what I mean? It's like I can only imagine what's happening on the sister side. You know?
Yeah, no, I mean it's the stories. I feel like it's like there's been a lot. There's been instances of like, especially during Ramadan, absolute like tomfoolery. Kids
Mm.
like stealing shoes, throwing things across like fences into like abandoned, like, I don't know, church parking lots. One time during Jummah, someone was literally doing yoga in the middle of the khutbah.
Huh?
Like, yeah, like on the
Why
back
is
feet again. And I think a lot of it has to do with like the same reason that like kids will sit in the back of classrooms, because when
uh
you feel like no one can see you, you start to do like crazy
random
things,
stuff?
random things, because you're not paying attention, because you can't see the teacher can't see you, you don't really know what's going on, so you just start doing things. And so while I do think like the sister doing yoga was doing a lot, like that's not cool on one
Wait, so
hand. The
this in the
other
middle
is,
of the khutbah. He's like like reciting ayat hadith, and she just over there stretching. Like she's just
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah. Or like having very loud conversations, like full
oh.
blown, either on the phone or with each other. And I'm just like, this is like crazy. And I do think a large part of the fact is like you don't feel seen or heard. So
And let me add to
why
that.
pay attention? Mm.
because that was one theory I had as to why. Like, I know they used to complain about like, oh, after Eid we can't hear the khutbah, right? And as somebody from my like, I used to like MC events. Well, I still MC events, right? Book me now, I host the events. I'm just playing. But like, I used to like also DJ, right? So I'm like very keen on sound and audio and things of
Mm.
that nature. And I'm like, well, the reason they talk, I mean, they should have more adab and, of course, out of respect of the khutbah, because the khutbah is like, it counts for two of the rakat, right? For the salat, right?
Mm.
Or just in general, right? You have to listen to khutbah for Eid. But
Mm.
the sister side, they didn't have any speakers at that time. They improved it now. Now they have speakers, mashallah, everything's good. But they didn't have speakers. So it's like, if you have all
Mm.
of these children who are yelling and then they can't hear even the khatib, some of them just like, whatever. Like you said, they don't feel seen or heard. So then they just say, forget it. After years and years of this happening, it just,
Mm.
whatever. And because,
Yeah.
Eid is a celebration. So of course they want to go and, they wore their nice clothes. They want to be seen, people want to be with each other. It's a celebratory period.
Mm. Yeah, no, for sure. And so I think that has a large part to do with like I said, at I don't want to say at my big age because I'm not that old, right? But like at the age that I'm at now, it is kind of just like I don't have the patience to deal with that when I feel like I don't have to.
Hmm.
And so my response is to disengage. And I won't say that it's correct, but I think for where I'm at right now, it works for now.
And if you want to look from an Islamic like perspective, right? Like, I mean, of course, like it's encouraged you go to the masjid to pray, like the salat and things of that
Mm-hmm.
nature. But like, for example, like the most like all men have to go to Jumu'ah prayer, right? Like it's far in all the
Mm-hmm.
madhahib for men to go, right? If I'm not mistaken. But for women, it's not. So it's like you, at least even per Sharia wise, like at least Islamically, like you're not like really breaking any laws by not going, right? But it
Mm-hmm.
is better if we have the whole community there, right? Because I always have this theory that, and it's a realistic theory, if the mothers aren't engaged in the community, then the children will more than likely not be as engaged in the community, right? At least
Yeah.
in that beginning period, which is very crucial and critical for them because that's their formative years, right? Maybe as they get
Mm-hmm.
older, they decide, let me go see for myself and let me do this and do that. But like, at least to really have an attachment to the masjid, right? Like it's very important, right? It's a very central piece to our lives. At least it should be as Muslims. So
Mm-hmm.
have you ever gotten involved in the masjid, like politics, being on a board, uh, uh, doing any volunteer work? That's an episode I'm gonna definitely do. We're gonna talk about some horror stories from volunteering because it's a couple of them I know people got.
Yeah, that's actually hilarious that you asked that question. Dang. I don't think I've ever mentioned masjid politics issues with you. So, um, yeah, I mean, I was definitely involved in issues of like masjid politics quite recently, actually. So that's definitely been a thing. But I also feel like in
Wait,
the
don't
time
use the podcast to sneak this nobody, please. Don't start
that's
sending
also why I
shots.
was like,
Don't start sending
no,
shots
nothing.
to and
And
that's why
that
I told him.
masjid down on.
And then your mom at this. Like, no, please don't. And,
But yeah, no, it's masjid politics. I feel like is just it's it's part of the game you play when you want to do like community work. I think it's unfortunate, and I think the nature of the politics is the same like across the board. Like it doesn't matter what kind of mission you go to, it's the same exact issue with the same kinds of people,
mhm.
and it's just again like exhausting. And I think yeah, it's one of those things where I it's still too fresh to like to like feel like I can like come back and be fully like involved. Um but I also recognize that like work still needs to be done. So my workaround is just be like, okay, well, I'm just not going to work with like this specific masjid for a while, but I'm gonna do work in other spaces, which I do, and I think that's like the alhamdulillah, like the beauty of things being online and us being able to be a lot more connected is that like the work doesn't have to stop just because issues
So so and
arise
so
that are.
did whatever.
Hmm?
So and so did whatever. Like you can still.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yep. Exactly. And so yeah, like masjid politics. I think it's just it's the name of the game. And I think if you're like if politics is your thing, then that's like a battle that like you guys can like take on. Who are our politicians in mass right now? We got Munira and Abdul Akil. Oh my gosh,
uh-huh.
like that's y'all's fight, and like I'm here to support. But like
You said, yeah, that's not
keep
involving me.
but yeah.
So I think that's one thing that does definitely people who are I think that the bad behavior and actions of those who aren't regulars at the masjid or those who are just ignorant turns away the casual people who come to the masjid, in particular youth. But then
Mm,
those people who are really like really sincere, hardworking people who try to come and volunteer, sometimes, not even sometimes, majority of the time, masjid politics is what turns them away. Once they get on the back end and really see what's going on, then it's like either they get burnt out or just like, why waste my time, right? Like I can be doing
mm-hmm,
something else, because like you said, it is politics. At the end of the day, you have to learn
mm-hmm,
how to navigate it, and not everybody's a politician, right?
mm-hmm,
Now I don't know enough if it should necessarily be like that, or if it's like those people just need to learn politics, or if it's a little bit of both. But as we transition, let's go to the next part of that, the next part of your identity, being a black Muslim in these spaces, in particular,
mm.
like a black Muslim woman. So what has that experience been like for you personally, being a black Muslim?
And like specifically in like larger Muslim spaces, or just like in I don't know my
Let's do a comparative one. Let's
existence.
talk about
Okay.
the being a black Muslim in where. What's the term you just used? You said in like majority spaces, or what did you just say?
I said in Muslim spaces, or just like as a part of my existence.
In Muslim spaces, let's say.
Okay. So we're starting off with that.
Hmm.
Mm, okay. Um, I think my this is everyone loves this topic. It's like, so what is it like? It's I feel like I've used the word
I know I can't
exhausting like
relate.
a
I've
lot.
never like. I don't know what it's like.
You don't know because like
No, I
I've
don't know what
never
it's like.
actually been black in
No,
any
no,
space really.
no, 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 no.
It's it's been a story of like trials and rewards. That's how I would describe it. I think there's definitely been instances where and experiences that have really made me question like the ummah as a whole. Um, to really just be like, and I don't know if it sounds bad to say or not, but like in my mind, it's like y'all say you fear God but act like this, like that's crazy. Um,
No, you shouldn't be afraid to say that statement. It's an accurate statement.
and I feel like it is, and I think whenever those
Because
like
it even
experiences
relates to
come
like the
up,
masjid politics too.
yeah, it really does, and I think which is like a whole different like conversation where what of like, but yeah, and so yeah, I think I've had experiences where like things like that have like blatant just off the wall craziness has happened where I'm just like that's like I can't believe we're still acting like this, right? From like I don't know, I think an undergrad when like folks still thought like or when non-black Muslims thought like using the N-word was still like an okay thing to do, and having to be like, no, you can't do that. Um, and then those annoying conversations that would have to ensue from that. To like the I guess the microaggressive things, the weird questions about how long have you been Muslim for? Oh, I didn't know you could. Oh, your Arabic is really good. I didn't know you pronounce things really well. Um, I didn't know you know how to pray. Like things like that that really just make you be like like these are wild statements coming
Mm-hmm.
from like people who you thought like you were close to, who you felt like should know better. And I think that's always the thing, especially within the Muslim community, and why like those instances like hurt more, is because it's like I feel like we should know better. And I think like undergrad, MSA, a lot of that was kind of just like a lot of folks are still at that like weird age where like they're not really like mature, even though like they're in their 20s. And so I found out this summer is that like I was abnormal at like 23. And that the rest of like I think the world's 23-year-olds are just a lot more immature than I remember them being. Um, and so like that's like one thing, but even like because this is like the ReMAStered podcast, right? So like even in like instances in like mass where like things would happen, and I think fortunately and unfortunately, when instances like that happened in mass, I was a lot less forgiving than in any other space that I've been in. Specifically because I'm like, yo, like we know so much better than to like act like this. Like we teach to not do these things. So whenever they occur or like instances happen or like my friends who are like black, regardless of like where in the diaspora they're from, who are or were involved in mass, tell me things and I'm like our 30 handbook like teaches the exact opposite of how we're acting. So like how am I supposed to react and feel in these situations? Um
Were these
and
things,
so
were these
mhm.
instances specifically like in the like these were minority instances, right?
Yeah, well, so yeah, so right, because we had like the whole like minority majority
Mm-hmm.
conversation. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think so in larger society, right? Because I think like that's why I say like asked about whether or not we're talking about like within the Muslim community versus like without or outside of it. So like outside of the Muslim community, I think I had like my first like racial incident of my life this past summer. Um And alhamdulillah, like I think I think it was just like Allah's way of like protecting me. Where like there hasn't really been instances that have occurred in my life where like I've experienced like blatant racism from the majority. The only time I can ever like, and I think a lot of that has to also do just like purposefulness of like where my parents sent us to like school when we were in like um K through 12, like what schools we went to, the communities that they surrounded us in, the neighborhoods that they had us in, like that just wasn't an issue. I think like Black Muslims in like Black spaces, regardless if they're Muslim or not, tend to have an easier time navigating um, versus being in like majority like PWI spaces. And so I didn't really experience anything for being like Black or Muslim outside of like the Muslim community. I think a lot of the instances where I've experienced microaggressions, um, really microaggressions, because I don't think even like there hasn't been like blatant like racism, right? Because that's just not socially accepted anymore. Has really only happened in Muslim spaces, um,
That's very
which I
interesting
get.
that you say that,
Mm-hmm,
that like majority of your instance. But you would think it would be the reverse, right? That outside you
mm-hmm,
would have more experiences that were negative as far as the non-Muslim world, because when you look at the
mm-hmm,
media, right, it's blatant hate towards just people that look like you, right? On both sides
Mm-hmm.
of the religion and as well as the ethnicity. Like it's just blatant hate that's constantly spewed out, you know. And because it's constantly put out, it subconsciously forms people's opinions, ideas, and then they act certain ways towards you, you know. Now, of course, this is a
Mm-hmm.
very large topic that like we could go on hours and hours for, you know. But let me ask you this, right? Let's say if you were to go back and you were to advise Nandee, or you're to advise some girl who's from Bangladesh, or some girl who's from China, some girl who's from Czechoslovakia, some girl from Ghana, right? Some girl from Iowa, right? These all these little girls in front of you, and you're to advise them. They're all Muslims, right? And you're to
Mm.
advise them about being a Muslim woman, being a hijabi, being black, being a minority ethnicity, and how to navigate that from age, let's say, what age people really become aware of things. Let's say from like 7 to 25, right? What
Mm.
advice would you give them?
Focus and hone in on their like on their self-confidence, because from what I've been taught and from what I've experienced, the more sure you are of yourself and of your beliefs, um, the more people are going to respect that. And it makes it easier to navigate when things get difficult. Um, and there's always going to be someone or something that comes along and tries to like tear you off that. But as long as your like foundation is strong and you're sure of who you are, you're sure of your purpose on this earth, and you're sure that like as long as I'm doing what I need to do, and as long as I'm continuously working on myself and fulfilling my promise to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that like he's got your back. And so like and to like walk the earth knowing that, and actively like acting on that. And it can be hard. It can be very difficult, especially when there are people and all of the things that exist specifically to like to knock you from that knowledge of yourself. But having a strong sense of who you are, having a strong hold onto the deen, and really just being like, I've decided that this is what I want to do for my life. I've decided that like Islam is my way of life. This is what I've committed myself to for all of eternity, for as long as I exist on this world. And that thought and that idea is what's going to get you to the end. Because when you have it in your mind that like nothing else matters, like you'll distractions will come, but when you really have it deep in your heart that like literally nothing else matters as long as I'm pleasing my Lord and doing what he tells me I need to do, it makes the hard decisions and the hard times a lot easier. It makes wearing, for me, it makes wearing hijab easier, because regardless of the looks and the glares and like the comments, like what other people say starts to matter a lot less when we know when I know what my end goal is, right? Especially like for those who are getting ready to go to university, like the peer pressure to do to go to the parties, to drink, to do all of those things. I remember there was an instance one time where I had a friend who was like, "Can you just like stop being Muslim, like take a couple of shots and then like just start being Muslim again?" And I was like, one, that's crazy. Two, I'm not going to hell for you. Like, and it was a joke, but I approached a lot of things like that. Even like a multitude of things, like any type of distraction that came, like, and I said it in a way that, like, of course, like, would make myself and others laugh, but like, really, I just feel like I'm not risking like eternal damnation to like have a good time for like 20 minutes. um and when you fully believe in like the benefits and also like the consequences of your actions, I feel like that helps a lot, as harsh as it might sound. But yeah, just be like, I'm not going to hell for you guys. Sorry, but not sorry. I'm gonna go study in the library.
Wow, Barakallah Fiki. That was really beautiful. That's a really nice way to wrap things up. You know, I think that we definitely seen that being a minority, it varies on the context of the situation, right? You could be a minority in spaces, or you could be a majority, right? And that can dictate how you act. But the biggest thing is to do your best to be understanding of your situation, the people around you.
Mm-hmm.
Do your best to be sincere towards those people, right? Because at the end of the day, right, you never know where you'll be, where you'll end up, and death is one
Mm-hmm.
of those places as well, right? So, like Nandee said, just keeping that on your mind about you will return to your Lord, right? And taking those proper actions. You know, I think that I don't know, it's just very interesting to sit and think about the whole dynamic of once you think about death, like, okay, I'm black, I'm white, or I'm from Egypt, I'm from Pakistan, I'm from, you know, when in reality, it's like you are, but it's like you're like the Muslim identity is way stronger, right? Because it gives you
Mm-hmm.
your way of life, it gives you your principles, you inherit a culture, right? But it's also like when you die, like you're not gonna say, oh yeah, when they raise you back or they ask you the questions in the grave. Yeah, I was from the east side of Jersey. Oh, mashallah. Okay, yeah, going to no, it's not like you know what I mean. It's nothing like
It,
right.
yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm from Cairo. Yeah. Oh okay, you spoke Masri. Yeah, yeah. Okay, good, good. No, it's none of that, right? But
Mm-hmm.
it's more so about the heart of the person and the actions, you know, and following the ways of
Mm-hmm.
our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
So,
And
so,
ultimately, at the end of the day, like him trying to please your Lord, like you said. I couldn't have said it any better. Any better. I said better, like Badr. I don't know if I'm thinking about Badr. Shout out Badr. Um, uh, Once again, thank you for being on the show. Jazakallah khairan.
wait.
Please, you guys check out the Revive package for this month. Please share this episode if you liked it. Subscribe to the
Yeah.
YouTube. Share it with your friends. Comment below. Tell us what other things you would like to hear on that podcast. Also, AIM conference for those who are interested. Phoenix, Arizona, September 1st through the 4th. That's going to be really nice. Will you be attending?
I am
You took too long to answer.
unsure.
Astaghfirullah.
Ah,
Astaghfirullah.
okay.
Astaghfirullah.
I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try, inshallah.
You know, I think this is your last time being on the show. So it's all right. I was just like, anyways, brothers and sisters, this is the ReMAStered podcast. You guys, thank you for listening. I pray Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives us for anything we may have said that may have been unsatisfactory on this show or any of the shows. And we pray He accepts the good deeds from us and our actions. And we pray He blesses all of us in our ummah. I'll talk to you guys later. Assalamu alaikum. See you guys.
Right. Assalamu alaikum.